The lights above the stage burned bright, bathing the set of The View in that familiar morning show glow, glossy, warm, and deceptively calm. But behind the scenes, there was a charge in the air. The audience had been packed tighter than usual, the producers moving with that brisk, almost jittery energy that meant something big was expected. Michael J. Fox was about to sit down at the table, and everyone knew this wasn't just another celebrity interview. When the announcer's voice boomed through the studio speakers, "Please welcome the legendary Michael J. Fox." The audience erupted. The applause was thunderous, a standing ovation before he'd even reached the stage. Michael appeared from backstage, his familiar, easy smile shining as he waved to the crowd. He moved with that unshakable grace he'd mastered long ago, the kind that said, "Yes, my body may falter, but my spirit doesn't." Whoopi Goldberg stood first, greeting him with a hug that drew another round of applause. "Michael J. Fox, ladies and gentlemen," she said, beaming. "Still making the world better one day at a time." Michael chuckled softly. "One step at a time, Whoopi." "Sometimes two, if I'm lucky." The audience laughed warmly. The man had a way of disarming everyone in the room within seconds. He took his seat between Whoopi and Joy Behar, flashing that self-deprecating grin that had won over generations. Sarah Haynes leaned forward, eyes bright. "Michael, it's honestly incredible to have you here. You've inspired millions with your work, your acting, your books, your foundation. You've basically redefined what it means to keep moving forward." "Thanks, Sarah," he said, nodding. "But really, I've just been stubborn. That's the secret ingredient nobody talks about." The crowd chuckled again. Whoopi smiled. "You're also here to talk about your new book, right? No Time Like the Future. I read it, and I have to say, you've got this amazing way of being hopeful without sounding like you're selling anything." "That's the goal," Michael said, his tone soft but steady. "Hope's not something you can package. It's not something you preach either. You just live it. Some days it works, some days it doesn't. But you try." The audience applauded, many of them visibly moved. There was something magnetic about the way he spoke, never pitying himself, never forcing optimism, just real. Joy Behar, sitting to his left, smiled thoughtfully, but her eyes had that familiar glint, the one viewers at home recognized as her "I'm about to challenge you" look. She waited until the applause died down, then leaned forward. "Michael," she began, "you've always been this beacon of positivity. I mean, it's amazing. But I wonder, do you ever worry that being too positive makes people overlook the real struggles that come with what you're facing?" The audience quieted almost instantly. It wasn't an unkind question, but it carried an edge. Whoopi shifted slightly in her chair, already sensing where this might go. Michael turned to Joy, thoughtful but composed. "That's an interesting way to put it. What do you mean by overlook?" "Well," Joy said, adjusting her glasses, "you've had a lot of success, fame, support, money. Not everyone living with Parkinson's or other chronic illnesses has that. So when they see someone like you talking about optimism and acceptance, it might feel a little out of reach, don't you think?" A murmur spread through the audience. It wasn't hostile, but it was tense. The kind of moment where people lean forward waiting to see how someone will respond. Michael paused for a moment, the corners of his lips curving just slightly. He didn't flinch, didn't frown. "You're right, Joy. Not everyone has what I have. And I don't take any of it for granted. But hope isn't a luxury, it's survival." That landed. The audience began to clap again, small at first, then louder. Joy smiled, but there was a flicker of discomfort in her eyes. "Sure, but you have to admit, for some people it's easier said than done. Some people just don't have the same emotional tools or support system you do." Michael nodded slowly, his voice calm but firmer now. "That's true. But it's not about having hope. It's about building it. You don't wake up one day optimistic. You earn it. You fight for it. You screw up, you cry, and then you keep going anyway." The audience clapped again, this time more intensely. Whoopi folded her arms, smiling like a proud teacher watching a student deliver a perfect answer. Joy wasn't done yet. "Okay, but," she began. But Michael's tone shifted just slightly, not angry, but cutting through the noise. "Joy," he said, his voice gentle but commanding, "do you think optimism means pretending things are fine?" Joy blinked. "Well, in a way, yeah. Sometimes it can seem like a kind of denial." Michael smiled faintly. "Denial is saying everything's great. Optimism is saying everything's hard, but I'm still here. Big difference." The room went still for a moment. You could feel it. That subtle shift from debate to revelation. He continued, his voice carrying that quiet conviction that comes from lived truth. "You know, I've been dealing with this for over 30 years. I shake, I stumble, I forget things I wish I didn't. There's no pretending that away. But the minute I stop believing there's something worth waking up for, that's when the disease really wins." Applause burst again, louder, longer this time. Several people in the audience stood up, clapping and cheering. Joy crossed her arms, smirking a little but clearly unsettled. "You've got a comeback for everything, don't you?" Michael chuckled softly. "No, not everything. Just the important stuff." The laughter that followed was rich, easy, the kind that releases tension. But Michael wasn't done. He leaned forward slightly, eyes locked on Joy, but his tone stayed kind. The studio was still buzzing after the break, but the energy had changed completely. What had started as a polite celebrity interview had turned into something electric, raw, unscripted, and deeply human. The crew whispered in hushed tones near the cameras, producers gesturing subtly for calm as the red on-air light flicked back to life. "Welcome back to The View," Whoopi Goldberg announced, her voice smooth but brimming with amused tension. "If you're just tuning in, you've missed quite a conversation with the incredible Michael J. Fox. And if you have been watching..." She grinned at the audience. "Well, you know we're all still catching our breath." The audience laughed and cheered. Michael smiled sheepishly, adjusting his seat a little. He didn't bask in moments like this. He always looked like he'd rather deflect the attention than hold it. Joy Behar was smiling too, though there was a flicker of unease behind her usual confidence. The earlier exchange had shaken her, and she knew it. Sarah Haynes leaned in with that easy warmth she was known for. "Michael, before the break, you said something that really hit me, about hope not being denial but defiance. That was powerful. Can you talk a little more about what you mean by that?" Michael looked thoughtful for a moment. The audience quieted almost instantly. His pauses had weight now. "Sure," he said finally, his voice soft but unwavering. "You know, people look at me and they see Parkinson's. That's fair. It's obvious. But what they don't see are the choices behind every moment. Every smile, every joke, every step I take, they're all acts of defiance. Against fear, against despair, against that little voice that says, 'You can't anymore.'" The studio went still. Even Joy, who normally jumped in at every opportunity, stayed silent. Michael went on, his hands moving slightly as he spoke, his tremor visible but unhidden. "I could sit at home and feel sorry for myself. I could get angry that my body doesn't do what I want anymore. And believe me, I've done both. But one day I realized, if I'm still breathing, I've still got a shot at doing something that matters. Even if it's just making someone laugh, that's defiance. That's how you take your power back." The audience began clapping again, slowly at first, then building into full applause. Several people were visibly emotional. Whoopi smiled, leaning toward him. "You just turned this place into a sermon, man." "I'm about to pass a collection plate." Michael laughed, shaking his head. "Hey, if it goes to Parkinson's research, pass away." The audience roared with laughter, and the tension that had filled the air began to ease again. Joy chuckled, but this time it was genuine. She tapped her cue cards lightly on the table. "You know, I've been on this show a long time," she said, "and I've had people yell, argue, cry, but nobody's ever made me shut up and think quite like you did." Michael smiled warmly. "That's probably the nicest thing anyone said to me today." Joy grinned. "Don't get used to it." The laughter rolled again, but it was easy, respectful. Sarah leaned forward, her expression bright. "Let's talk about your foundation a bit. You've raised over $2 billion for Parkinson's research, right?" Michael nodded, his voice steady. Yeah, it's been an incredible journey. The Michael J. Fox Foundation has been around for over 20 years now. And the truth is, we're not just looking for a cure anymore. We're changing the way people think about the disease. That's the real victory. It's not just about medicine. It's about mindset. Whoopi tilted her head. That's heavy, man. You've managed to make a global impact while staying so humble. Most people would be shouting it from rooftops. Michael chuckled softly. Well, shouting takes energy I don't have. Besides, it's not about me. The people in the labs, the patients, the caregivers, they're the real heroes. I just get to be the loudmouth with a microphone.